I'm DaJuan Johnson. Welcome to the Think Bigger Actors podcast, where I share with you different kinds of talks and coachings and conversations with actors and industry professionals on thinking bigger. I hope these conversations will help you on your path to success, because I believe success is an inside job that starts with your mindset and the thoughts you hold dominant in your mind. Change your thoughts and you change your world. Your path to thinking bigger begins now. Welcome back to the Think Bigger Actors podcast. I'm your host, DaJuan Johnson, and I've got a great podcast for you today. I got special guest, casting director John Levey, and he came on to talk about his book, Right for the Role: Breakups, Breakdowns, and Breakthroughs. It's a fantastic talk, and I'm always trying to get casting or showrunners or directors or other actors on here to just really give us a peek inside of the process, success, and all those things inside the podcast, so we can learn from it and we can be our best self on TV or film or wherever we decide to be inside of this industry. But this podcast was recorded before the strike, or during the strike. I think it was recorded during the strike. But all the information is really, 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 really good. John Levey gives a great talk. I mean, come on, 35 years in the business. I would think he's been through strikes before. Well, he has been through strikes before, because we know there were strikes. So good stuff, really, really good stuff inside of the book. But speaking of post-strike, at the time of this recording, we are days away from either ratifying or rejecting our contract that we got from the strike. I think it's going to pass. And to be very transparent, I've taken a back seat on this one. And not of course, I was out there during the strike, and I was talking about the strike during the podcast and all the other stuff. I definitely was there. But I mean, taking a back seat on talking about what I'm voting for this contract, meaning I haven't really said that, publicly, not because I don't love and want to support the tribe and actors, but because I think every actor needs to make this decision for themselves, really needs to get read up on, all the stuff people are talking about and make this decision for themselves. So I haven't said that, publicly, like I said, what I'm voting for. And, since this is my podcast, let me dive into this. I kind of take issue with all of the bigger actors who are piping up and telling actors right now, I'm voting yes, and you should vote yes on the contract, or, just really trying to, I'm just going to say it, strong arm us into, voting yes or voting no for that matter. I don't think, what's going on there, but the big thing I take issue where were they? Where were these bigger actors during the strike? I didn't see them on the picket line. I didn't see them voicing anything on social media. I didn't see them using their quote unquote celebrity to help smooth over thoughts with the general public about why we're striking, because that's what the public sees. They see the big actors out there making all this money, but they weren't out there talking, just really, really, really supporting it. And I know we can get on the other end and play devil's advocate. I ain't got time for that. But we can get on the other end and play devil's advocate and be like, well, we don't know that they didn't. I don't know. This is a public industry. And so get out there and talk about it. So I don't know. I didn't see them doing that with the studios and networks behind closed doors, maybe. But, I don't know. Why are you using your celebrity right now to convince the actors to vote yes on there? And I'm going to be honest with you, it feels like it comes down to money. Some will say, no, it's to get back to work, to the art, to the process. But I really feel like it's money. It's kind of just left an interesting taste in my mouth. And if you listen to the D12 shot, the last couple episodes, post-strike or while we're in the strike, I think how I feel about you, about myself, and every other actor really seeing behind the curtain that this is a business. The more we have our hopes and our dreams only wrapped up in this industry, the more we will be let down. So I'm not mad at those celebrities. I'm not mad at them. I understand they get that this is a business. I feel like I've known that for a while, but really just got another crash course like in it. And so, but the more we don't see that, we're going to be disappointed, let down, disillusioned. And I want to be clear. I'm the mindset guy. That doesn't mean we have to walk around negative, attracting negativity, being ho-hum, being jaded about our industry. On the contrary, I believe it gives us permission to show up differently, to move differently, to protect our heart differently, to get that bag, go after that money differently. We need to start operating like this is a business. Like a business. I'll keep saying that as much as possible. And so, like I said, I'm not upset at the quote unquote celebs not stepping out and doing that. It left a weird taste in my mouth, but I also am looking at them and be like, okay, I see you. You see this as a business. It's time for us to really start seeing this as a business too. And I'm going to keep saying that to you as long as you keep listening to me. I'm excited. I'm excited to get this going today. Like I said, I got casting director John Levey here today. He doesn't like to be called a legend. I called him a legend casting director on the pod. But when you've been doing it for this long and you've helped cast some great shows like ER and West Wing and Shameless, just to name a few of them, and you got an Emmys, I think we can call you a legend or or at least legend adjacent. So he's got a new book called Right for the Role, and it's freaking great. I read it during the strike, and like I said, it was fantastic. And there's a link of it below in the comment section of this podcast if you want to grab it and check it out. Maybe go to some of his readings and get it signed. But I think some of the big stuff that he talked about in this, we really break down the secret sauce. Well, there's so much secret sauce. We can't say this is the only secret sauce, but we break it down. We talk about his book. We break down the sweet spot of acting, something I believe that if you really, really, really get this and bring it to your auditions, your self-tapes, your characters, your work, you'll be leagues above the rest. And just to tease a little bit of it, we talked about authenticity, intelligence, and sensitivity, imagination, and talent. And, we just really broke that down, stemming from stuff he talks about in the book. So it's a great pod. And, of course, we talk about self-tapes. We got to go into self-tapes because I'm a self-tape guy, too. Oh, man. Oh, wow. You know what he also does? He talks about the worst thing an actor can do. Y'all, we went in. And John was really open about talking about all of it. So, don't forget to stick around to the end for the D12 shot where I bring it all together, of course. But let me know what you think of the book, too. I can't wait to hear about it. Mr. John Levey, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing good. It's hot as hell out here in Burbank, but I'm as soon as we're done, I'm going to jump in the pool and cool off.
Oh, really, really, really? That sounds like a great one. It's, Burbank's getting slapped with almost 3 digits, almost 100, right? Yeah. Right. Not good. We should have did this interview in the winter. We should have, Ew, that's great. I'm so excited to jump into a little bit of this with you, but I wanted to just start with, many people don't know. I didn't take my dad's last name. It's DaJuan Johnson. I didn't take my dad's last name, but his last name is Levey. And oh, really? Yeah, I just wanted to let you know from the start of this that we might be related, And so, but we're from Tennessee, and I don't think you're from Tennessee, taken from what I've been, getting from
Western New York is the roots, and also my last name is Levey. Was yours?
Well, it's so interesting. When my grandfather had the last name, it was Leavy.
Yeah, and that's sort of the Irish way of spelling it.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. But he changed it when he moved to Chicago to Levy. So, so could have been one of those two, but we figured this out with Ancestry.com. I know this is boring, but it's really exciting to me.
Me too.
Right? It is. I mean, you're like a legend in the casting world. Even before like I picked up your book and wanted to have you on. What is it? What does that mean when somebody says you're a legend in the casting world? Like, do you feel like a lot to live up to?
Well, false modesty is really not very attractive. So I know I did contribute to the success of some really important television shows, and I'm grateful for having had that opportunity. And I don't think of myself as legendary. That's a bit much, but I do think of myself as a contributor to excellence and a member of a community of people who worked really well together and did some wonderful things, and I'm very proud of that. And nobody goes into casting to be the center of attention, and the fact that I've gotten more than my share of attention is humbling in a good way.
Yeah. It's funny. I was reading your book and I was initially reading it to make sure I was ready for this podcast, and I just couldn't put it down. I couldn't, I was like just skimming it. And I was like, I got to read this whole thing. And one of the things you said early in the beginning was that casting is tribal. Right. You're like, it's tribal and your lineage you came from. And it's so interesting. I don't know if you didn't mention this person in the book yet, the part I've gotten to. But when I first came out to Los Angeles, I worked in a casting office as an intern for Mally Fenn. And
Oh, wow.
I was thinking, did I just age myself? A little bit. And I was thinking, I remember being, a 20-something-year-old actor, and in the presence, I didn't know that it was such a great match. I just wanted to work in a casting director's office, and thinking of the stuff that I got to learn from her, from being in that space, was amazing. And it sounds like I understood it's tribal. When I was reading, I was like, wow, you come from a good lineage too from this.
Yeah. Absolutely. I jokingly say that casting directors are like racehorses. In the program it says by so and so and out of such and such. By so and so is the male progenitor, and out of is the female. But all of my training was under complicated and wonderful, smart, talented, somewhat difficult women. Particularly Marcia Kleinman. Mm-hmm. Was the best teacher I ever had in any subject.
Yeah.
And just mostly by osmosis, but also by direct communication. She would end the day by saying, what did we learn today?
Yeah.
And we would have a 15-minute conversation before I got to go home to try to figure out what we'd learned that day. And that's an extraordinary thing to end a work day with, and I'm grateful to her for that.
Yeah, I get a question for you. Who is this book for? I'm like, who is it? I know it's for actors, but like, who is this for? Is it for the actor that's aspiring, or is it for the actor that just loves the art? Like, who is this for?
Well, while it is primarily for actors, I think it's valuable for anyone, because I think all of us, particularly artists, but all of us, no matter what we do, are on a journey of self-discovery, self-actualization, figuring out who the hell we are, and figuring out where we fit. And the book is the title is kind of a pun. Actors think they're right for every role. I was grateful to, in my life's journey, find the role that I was right for, so that gave me the opportunity to bring my intelligence and my sensitivity and my instincts and my sense of humor and my willingness to misbehave and all of those things, and turn all of them into assets. And I think we're all on that journey of finding out the role we're right for. And if we're lucky, we find a role that we're right for, where we can really contribute to a community of people who are, as Tommy Lasorda, the great Dodger manager, used to say, pulling the rope in the same direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. You have a quote in here about the actor and their experiences, and if they're hiding from each other, right? Like actors, you say actors have their experiences and their imagination out of which they can create. If they're hiding and pretending, they can never do anything else. And I thought to myself, wow, that's pretty deep. I mean, you were talking about yourself there in that one, but I, as an actor, I took it to heart for me. And to think like you're saying, not even, I guess at this point you're still a casting director, but you're saying, as from your young you, if there's any pretending, then we can't get to our full self. Is that kind of what I'm understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true for actors because they're unique among artists, because they're the instrument and the player, but also it's true for everybody. If you're not being honest with yourself about where you are, then you can't access an honest response to somebody wanting something from you or needing something from you. And then you can't be in an authentic relationship with your work, with your spouse, with your children, with your friends, unless you're in an honest relationship with yourself.
Mm. That's a recurring theme in your book, authenticity. It's like highlighting the significance of it. You say it over and over again about tapping into the genuine selves during performances. Going into that, I guess I just want to explore that a little bit more. Are you saying, like, you talk about George, but anybody that comes into your office, if they can't have these honest moments unless they have done the work on themselves? I just want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think that actors, artists, particularly, but everybody, I'm saying the same thing over and over again. You have to, in order to access the best parts of yourself and bring those parts of yourself to your work and your relationships, you have to know who you are and be in an honest relationship with who you are, and be dedicated to growing and changing.
Yeah.
That's our journey.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we get a lot as actors out here is casting directors, when we used to go in the room a lot more, of course, but is bring more of you to the role. I want to see more of you. Is that about what we're talking about, authenticity, or is that something totally different?
No, I think that's similar to what we're talking about. I hope I'm talking about it in a slightly deeper way than what that implies. It's like, I think a silly direction which is often given to actors is have more fun with it.
Yeah.
Well, what the hell does that really mean? So bring more of yourself is kind of like, well, what else are you gonna bring?
Sorry. What do you think that means then? I love that it's a silly thing. Have more fun. Just play around with it a little more, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it wants to mean tap into your creativity and see what happens. Don't have a plan exactly. Don't know, where you need to do this and when you need to do that, and map out the interior of the character's thoughts and feelings, and the marriage between you and the character's circumstances. Map that out and let the result take care of itself. And if you do that authentically, the result will be interesting.
Yeah.
You may or may not get the job, but you will have likely made a positive impression that will lead to the future.
Yeah. I've started to understand when I work with actors, or myself even so, that somewhere along the lines, we as actors have taken ourselves out of the audition, our creativity, because we're so worried about what do the casting directors want, what do the directors want, and instead of, so that to me, bring more of you is not doing everything that's on the page, but what do you want to contribute to it? What do you feel about that?
yeah, how do you marry with the circumstances of the character? Uh, uh, and if what you're thinking about when you're auditioning is, damn, I hope they like me, or shit, I just muffled that last word, I ruined everything, or damn, I landed that moment. When I was a kid, there were cartoons that had an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. Do you remember those
I
cartoons?
totally do. Yeah.
And the
Tom and
angel would,
Jerry. I think it was Tom and Jerry or something,
yeah,
right?
it might have been, yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
But one of them was always getting you off your game by telling you how fabulous you were, and the other one was getting you off your game by telling you what a jackass you were. And neither of those voices are helpful. And the thing to connect to is the circumstances of the characters and the way in which your authentic self and your thoughts and your feelings and your experiences and your imagination can meld with that character. And if you're thinking about how great you are or how lousy you are, that's not the character. The character isn't thinking about that stuff.
Yeah. John, can we take that a little deeper? Because I was reading George's story in your book. Can I call? I don't like. We're not. George and I aren't. George Clooney and I aren't friends. I don't know why I just called him George. Like, like we go.
Well, that's the magic of George, is that he makes us all think we are his brother.
I know. I summer with him on Lake Como. I was like George, But I was reading his story, and I was just thinking. Here's what I was thinking, that, wow, he already came from, like you said, sisters, or he had a following. How can this, a career, not a following, he had a career and a deal with the studio. Like, how can I relate to this of bringing myself to this or being right for the role? And you just said the circumstances, or you said melding the two. And I guess I just wanted to ask you from a CV's perspective, like, how do you do that? Or is that something like we're doing in acting? Right.
Well, if I could say it in a sentence, I didn't have to write the whole book. But, you know, um, George and lots of very successful actors has a really keen sense of himself and what his strengths are and what his attributes are and even what his weaknesses are, so that he can then turn those into strengths and assets. And probably his now happy marriage and fatherhood has left behind the part of himself, a little bit at least, that he could literally charm the pants off almost anybody on the planet. And and he knew that. And he also knew enough about himself and he did an astute enough reading of Dr. Ross on the page in the pilot script of ER to know that who he was married beautifully with who Dr. Ross was. And he saw it wisely as what it in fact turned out to be, the doorway from his career to his monumental career.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I guess I'm harping on this because I think that marriage is the sweet sauce. And I think, like we said a second ago, that so many of us actors are trying to be what you think you want us to be, John, and we think that's the right role. And I think this piece here is the seasoning sauce or the secret sauce to at least getting into your sweet spot as an actor.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think you've got the essence of it. My opinion is that the worst thing an actor can do is strategize and try to figure out what it is that they need to be. The best thing they can do is to do their work, be prepared, commit, care, and let the chips fall where they may. If you don't get the job, obviously it's not as good as if you do get the job. But if you do your work with authenticity and bringing yourself to it, and with great preparation, and all of the things that are tasked to actors, you will make a good impression, and that is more important in the long run than getting the job in the short run.
Yeah. You normalize yourself so much in this book. And I have to say, one of the things you just made me think about, I don't know where it was, but you said something to the effect of, as many careers as I've launched or helped or discovered, there's like tenfold of the people that, who didn't get the job, and you had to let them know as well. And I thought that was just such a honest moment, because we don't sometimes think of casting directors, I don't want to say as real people, but as having feelings.
I think you're right. I think you think of us as the obstacle to your career. Instead, one of the things I hope I've done in the book is to demystify the so-called power of the casting director. We want you to succeed. We're hoping that you're as dedicated and caring and authentic and open and honest as we are.
Mhm.
And I think that's really insightful of you to see. And again, if you're in your own head and in your own needs and your own concerns and cares, you're not in the character.
Yeah.
And so how can you possibly succeed?
Mm-hmm. So if you take some of those people who, listen, I don't know if this is true or not. This is something I say in my own head, that sometimes not always the best actor gets the role, but but sometimes that can't be true because everybody's amazing. But those tenfold people, and the people that booked it, what do you think was the standout thing?
Well, I think we've been talking about it. I think taking the work seriously, being prepared, having a technique that you can rely on because you're trained.
Mm-hmm.
You've taken your training seriously.
Yeah.
And then being smart and being able to read the script and understand what it's actually about from an emotional perspective. And also, being intuitive so that you have the capacity to what if yourself into the circumstances that the character is having, either through your imagination or at the application of your own real life experiences. And if you're on that journey that I've talked about becoming more honestly and definitively yourself, you'll have more imagination and experiences to draw on. And that's your responsibility and your opportunity as an artist, is to do that. And I don't know, did I answer your question?
You did. I'm just thinking of some of those things, because you hear make a bold choice, or you hear, right. And so I'm trying to make, just really bring it down to, there could have been 5 people that were really great for the role. And what did it come down to? Because, those 5 people, I don't want them moving back to their hometown now because they're like, John didn't like me, or I didn't book it. You know what I mean? So I was just trying to.
Absolutely. Well, I think when you're trying to get a role as a guest on a television series, first of all, know that you're there shining a light and feeding the series regulars. Mm-hmm. Because they're the people who are bringing our audience back every week, and that's who our audience is invested in. And a good session is when 3 or 4 of the people who've read the scene with authenticity, intelligence, sensitivity, imagination, all of those things, talent. Mm-hmm. But which one shines which kind of a light on, if we were casting a love interest for Dr. Ross on ER, did the scene want to contribute to Dr. Ross's just realizing that he's a commitment phobe who's just after a fabulous night, and maybe he's going to realize something important about himself, and maybe he's going to be willing to make more of an investment in his relationship with Nurse Hathaway. And so if you're the woman who shines that light on Dr. Ross and gives him the opportunity to discover something about himself, then you're likely to get the job. If you're just the hottest lover, that might not be what the scene is about. It might be what the scene is about.
Right.
So, I mean, I think, what you bring to the table, who your authentic self is, and how it impacts the series regular in the scene is the determining factor. I hate it when a director says, well, the balding guy with the goatee was the only one who could possibly do it. That's failure to me. Obviously, I prefer it if somebody gets the job than if nobody gets the job. But I'd like there to be a substantive conversation about how the scene is different if it's that guy, or if it's that guy, or if it's that guy. Yeah. And I'd like a lot of people to read as talented, serious actors who can be trusted to perform the role if they shine the appropriate light on the series regular.
It also sounds like one of the things I've been trying to, as I've been working a lot, is trying to normalize not everybody, or not every role you go out for, you're not going to get every role. And
no.
just in alignment with your book, what your title is, you're right for the role. I joke about there's alternate universes where other actors are like, I bartended for 12 years. And this breakdown says a bartender for 12 years. And you think you're like, I'm totally right for this role. But I'm like, there's 12 other people who are saying that in other universes, and they're all going into your office. And we have to normalize not everybody is going to get the role.
Well, that's why you have to have the long view and have a long career. And if you don't get the role, at least do a good job. Acquit yourself well, make a good impression. That's just as important. Obviously, as I said before, it's, the paycheck, you're in it for the profession, but you're also in it for the artistry and the satisfaction. And I think doing a great audition should feel really satisfying. And then, a little disappointing if somebody else gets it. But, on Animal Kingdom, the guy who played Craig was very tall. And sometimes if there were two actors playing opposite him in an audition, his height made it, if it was a love scene with a woman, if she was 5'1" and he was 6'4", it's a little harder to shoot.
Yeah.
If it's a fight scene and you're 5'6" and weigh 125, he's going to kick your ass in the first 30 seconds. Right. And if you want him to be a worthy adversary, then the physicality becomes important. There are a million factors that go into why somebody is the rightest for the role, or at least gets the job.
Yeah. I got a hot take here for you. I was reading your book. And you talk about, I'm just going to read a little bit. You talk about diversity, right? And you said, I know this is a loaded statement, you said, but in my opinion, diversity is always to cast the people who are best for the role. What is the essence of the character, you ask? And then you say real systemic change comes from when the commitment is to the level, the playing field, and then bring in the best. And I guess I loved it in theory, right? Like the commitment is to do exactly what you're saying. And it just hasn't always felt like that coming from a person of color, why
it hasn't always felt like that? Because it wasn't always like that.
Well, there you go.
And I think, in whatever year it was that the Supreme Court, when it was actually a Supreme Court, ruled that busing for school desegregation was necessary because segregation was so inculcated and institutionalized that it needed an extreme measure to be counterbalanced.
Right.
Well, diversity in television in the last 10 years has been something like busing for television, because we did such a crappy job at organically reflecting accurately the culture and the people in that culture. We had to have studios and networks say, do better. If you look for more women, look for more people of color, look for more gay and lesbian and trans, and be willing to participate in representation, go out of your way. And I'm not bragging because you're a man of color, but it's always been important to me. I grew up in a progressive household,
Right.
as a stupid 14-year-old, sang "We Shall Overcome" on a bus all night to Washington, D.C. from New York City, only to end up falling asleep when Martin Luther King was giving his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. That's a story I tell in the book as well. I had a dream at the same moment that he did.
Oh gosh.
Mine was banal and unimportant, and his was gigantically important.
Yeah.
And while it's true we could have done better, say on ER, only Eric was among the people of color who was series regulars.
Yeah.
We populated the nurses and the EMTs and the other doctors and the patient base
Yeah.
with people of color, because it was the truth.
Yeah.
Upper middle class people don't go to the emergency room unless they've broken their arm. They go to their private physician. The people who go to the ER are people without insurance or without private physicians.
Yeah. I thought it was great. And I just want to say thank you for pointing that out, right? When I was reading that, as a person of color, I was just kind of like, yes, yes, yes. And I was like, but how do we make that the ticket? And, so I just want to say thank you to you for.
I take no credit for it. It's part of my core values. I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe that, young Asian girls ought to be able to watch television and see themselves as part of the fabric of society, and that exclusion is the opposite of diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And it's when all the writers were white men, it was no surprise that most of the stories were about white men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so until we were able to include people of color who were creating the content, it felt a little unnatural. There was a time early on in the diversity equation when the fifth lead was a handsome black man with a silver goatee, and it was not organic that he was black. It was just because the poster wanted it.
Right. Right.
And now we're starting to get more, writers of color who are writing stories about their experiences. And so, the first and third and fifth lead are all people of color because it's the truth.
Yeah. I guess I want to not take issue with it, but I think not everybody has the values that you have. So I think you can't take credit for that. Like, do you know what I mean? And so, just if you don't mind, I take issue with that because I think it sounds like this is something that you have decided to continue because, you could say no to it. Right. And from your book.
For one thing, you can't say no to it anymore if you want. So there's that. But, one of the things that's been so special about being a casting director is that it throws you into worlds you know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
When I was casting the trans role on Shameless, I didn't know that if I knew any trans people, I didn't know it.
Right.
And I had no experience with that world. The same thing happened on ER when I was casting in the deaf world. It was so wonderful as an opportunity to learn and grow. And I know I tell the story in the book, but I think it's a very moving story. One of the trans actors that came in, who had been a classmate of my daughter's at a small elementary school in the San Fernando Valley, and when she was a little girl, she was obviously extremely unhappy person. And when he came in to read for the role of the trans character opposite Ian on Shameless, and I got to encounter this same person who was now well-adjusted, happy male, He and I both cried.
Oh yeah, yeah. See, those stories and are amazing, and you must have had a lot of, I don't know, people around you or diving into it, because Southland was I thought, very representative. Like, you know what I mean? And it felt like that too. It wasn't just how did you put it? It was organic. It felt
Yeah.
organic and not
Well,
forced.
when Regina King is one of your stars,
Yeah.
you have an object lesson in authentic Black beauty, intelligence, talent, just all of it. Um, oh hell, she made me wish I was a Black woman.
I know. I mean, she's queen. She's queen. Like, for me, I just can't wait to work with her one day down the road. You know, I guess one of the things, again, I haven't gotten to the end of the book yet. Everybody, seriously. By the way, this is a signed copy. Did you sign this? Is this really your, like?
Yeah. Did you buy it at the Barnes and Noble on Ventura Boulevard in
I
Studio
did.
City?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
well, my longtime partner Karen says that I kept Barnes and Noble in Studio City busy in business during the pandemic, because I spent the whole pandemic reading, and they've been very kind to me. And I believe there are still 2 copies of the book that are signed in the window of the Barnes and Noble on Ventura Boulevard in Studio City. And also, I'm doing some live events where I'm autographing books and selling them directly. And that way, Jeff Bezos doesn't get all the money.
Yeah, you know what? That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to support. I know nobody, you don't think of Barnes & Noble as local, but I live in the Valley as well. So it was local to me. And I was like, I could order this or get it on, whatever they had, ebook or something like that. Or I could go there and, I kind of like, I'm still old school and like the physical copy of that. But it was really, really great here. So what I was just saying is I haven't gotten to the end part of this yet. And you might have already talked about this, but like, what's your take on casting in this self-tape world? Because that's what a lot of actors right now are really talking about.
Well, it's a complicated conversation, because obviously technology is a great benefit. I mean, I got on Instagram, a friend put me on, and the wonderful Tawny Tamietti, who works with me in casting, has helped feed my Instagram, and my Instagram has proven itself to be enormously effective at selling the book. And so, and technology has saved me from sitting on the floor, opening 1,000 envelopes and sorting through the pictures and resumes, etc. But because I'm old school, I miss you guys.
Yeah.
And my experience of being a casting director was greatly enhanced by getting to share a space with you, and watch you in the hallway, in the waiting room, watch you when you come into the office, and learn about you with the way you get a phone number of a girl in the waiting room, or compete with someone who's always opposite you. I always tell a story about the young Glenn Plummer and the young Don Cheadle were often in the same room auditioning, and whoever came in second would kind of always go, "Oh hell, you're here again." And there's so much to learn about people by sharing oxygen with them, and so I miss you greatly, and the pandemic isolated us from each other in so many ways, and now technology is also isolating each other from each other. And I get it. It's better for you. You don't have to drive across town from MGM to Warner Brothers and change your shirt while you're driving, and find a place to park and make sure that the pass to get on the lot hasn't gotten screwed up by your agent, or there's a million ways that it's better, but there's a central way that it's missing: humanity.
Yeah. So I agree, by the way. It's hard for me because I absolutely love the convenience of self-tapes. And I always say that I dislike the connection that happens with them, like, missing that piece of it. I'm just, I'm wondering as I sit here with you that you have so many great isms about process, about connection, about circumstances and all those things inside of your book in the beginning, and how to make sure we take all that and translate it to a self-tape, to a self-tape that pops. What would you say like would be one of those key things to take away with that? Or
Well,
Mary?
I think the most important thing is what we've been talking about, is to do your preparation, read the script. You said earlier that you're often encouraged to make a bold choice. And I would amend that by saying making a strong choice that is indicated in the script. If you're the two-line bartender who says, "You guys ready for another round?" The fact that your uncle abused you at Thanksgiving is entirely irrelevant. Right?
Yeah, right.
The scene is about giving good service and getting a good tip.
Yeah.
It's not, don't make it more complicated than it is. But ultimately it's about making an authentic connection to your own experience and imagination that will allow you to successfully and simply marry your circumstances with the circumstances of the character. And if you do that with a simplicity and an honesty based on that connection, your work will be good and it will pop.
Right.
Then you'll either get the job or you won't. And but your responsibility to yourself and to your representatives and to your partners, your collaborators, meaning me, is to take your work seriously and do it with the most artistic, authentic self you can. And if you do that, you'll either get the job or you won't, but you'll make a good impression and you'll be given entree into my repertory company. And I'll start actively looking for something for you.
Wow. Yeah. By the way, I think I don't try to make a bold choice anymore, because I think a bold choice really is just being dropped in and really listening. That's like how the bold choice is, that instead of like trying to hop on one foot, with that, right? You also talk about this other thing in the book that I thought was just so interesting. I want to get your take on it here, is transportation. What I mean by that is, well, you put it in being transported, right? And so I wonder, let me give a little bit of history there. You're saying, I guess, being transported, if it's a period piece, or if I'm really into the scene with you, if I'm in that world, and I guess that's what you're saying in the book. I want to know, what does that look like from your side, and how do we do it as actors?
Well, and I think if you do all of the things that we've already talked about, you will have successfully gotten out of your day and gotten into the day of the character you're portraying. I'm a big baseball fan and a basketball fan too. And sometimes you say, sometimes you can take a look at a guy and normally he might hit, one out of every 3 jump shots from 15 to 18 feet. And tonight he just hit 7 in a row. And that's him in the zone. That's him transporting himself out of his fears and his anxieties. That's him just being in his body so completely that the ball and his body and the net are one. I don't know if you watch any of this, in the last week before the All-Star break, Mookie Betts hit about 600, and if you hit 300, you're a millionaire.
Right.
He just kept, the ball could be down and away, up and in. It didn't make a damn bit of difference. He saw it. It was twice the size it normally was, and he was whacking the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And actors are just the same. If you do your preparation and let loose, jump out of the airplane, pull the ripcord, the parachute will open and you'll be flying. And that's, I would think as an actor, that would be a really exciting feeling. And as a casting director, having the privilege of being 6 or 7 feet away from that performance is an honor and a privilege. And when I have watched spectacular work happen, it makes me high as 20 kites.
I have to say, it's interesting. You use Mookie. My sons are baseball, like they just go in on it. And I didn't know Mookie. We went to a game about a month ago, and if you watch it, it was the game where he got out because he ran to third base and that person was still there coming back. It was like a big cluster F, and he struck out like twice at the plate. And I was like, why is everybody so Mookie crazy? Like, it's like he's not doing great. But hearing that story as he gets back in that pocket, in that zone, it really resonated with me as an actor, because sometimes
and you know what, you as an actor could have you might have had a dreadful, you might have had a dreadful day with your partner or whatever, and you come straight from, I remember I was doing a comedy years and years and years, decades ago, and a very pretty young woman came into my office, and I said to her, "Hey, how are you?" And she burst into tears. And I was like, wow. She said, "Well, I just came from the coffee shop around the corner and my fiance asked for the ring back." Well, I think you probably should call your agent and reschedule the appointment. Not likely that you're going to be real funny that day. And so you have slumps. You have, you're a person. You're made up of emotional matter, and you can't always be at the top of your game. But when you are, it's thrilling. Can we do one more Mookie story?
We sure can.
I went to the Dodger game with friends, and there were 4 of us, and we were sitting in the front row of the loge. Whoops, I dropped you. Of the loge, and I was paying attention, but I didn't see it. Mookie hit a foul ball. We were behind first base, and there's a screen, but we were just beyond the screen, and the foul ball curved around and landed on my inner thigh, 2 inches above my knee and several inches below my private parts. And the worst part of it was that it rolled to the floor and through the space and down to the field level. So I got a bruise autograph from Mookie Betts on my thigh, which 6 weeks later still hurts.
It still hurts. That is a good one. And if you were, everybody, I'm surprised. I thought this was going to end. Everybody was jumping for the ball down where you were.
No.
That's good.
Hey, actor. Are you constantly questioning what it takes to stand out in your self-tapes? Wondering if your backdrop's color really matters? Or should you or shouldn't you use props in your audition? Or maybe, what are casting directors really looking for in those first crucial 10 seconds? Hey, it's DaJuan, the self-tape guy, and I've got you covered. After surveying 800 actors in my self-tape challenge, I've compiled their top 10 questions into an exclusive playbook just for you. No more guesswork, no more uncertainty, and certainly no more stress. Get those answers you need to elevate your self-tapes at www.selftapeplaybook.com. I got equipment, I talk about props, wardrobe, and eye lines. I got you covered. It's high time for your self-tapes to stop being an obstacle to booking your dream role. Let's bring the joy of acting back into your life. Head on over to selftapeplaybook.com today, right now, so you can share in this success.
I could talk to you all day. John. Mr. Levey. I have to say, Mr. Levey. It's just I was raised in the South. It just comes out. I have one
either
more.
The South or the military.
Oh, right. It's my parents. I just heard them in my head say, Mister. One of the things I loved also, I keep talking about the book because it was so interesting, was you almost sound like a casting director whisperer, right? The way you said it in there was like, when people come in, they get in your space. It almost sounded like the matrix in your head was like, you instantly knew where to put them. You knew their things. And I guess what is that? Is that just intuition, or is that like, what was that?
Well, I think a lot of casting directors watch a lot more television and movies and theater than I did or do.
Mm-hmm.
And they're encyclopedic in their knowledge. They know your resume, and they're informed by what you've done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an intuitive person, and I've always said that casting is like falling in love and then behaving yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to fall in love with everybody, anybody,
Yeah.
And then behaving yourself. And falling in love is something that happens. It just you can't decide to fall in love. You can't know that you're gonna fall in love. It just happens if you're open.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always tried to be open to you, to receive you at your essential level, and to gift you with my authentic self.
Yeah.
And if we meet as two artists, two collaborators, two members of the same community in that open and honest way, good things will happen.
Yeah. I think a lot of it sounds like comes back to being authentic with yourself and being open in those spaces. I am getting more and more as I've worked out of that pocket of, again, what do you want? How can I turn John on? Or how can I get into that space? I don't want to read your book and be like, now I have to be this. I think the call to it, and maybe you'll tell me, is the takeaway from this is be yourself. That's the right.
But before you can be yourself, be dedicated to discovering yourself and to enhancing yourself, growing yourself, because yourself is the material you have to create art and to create life. And we all should be, look, if we were all dedicated to becoming the best person we could be and the best member of all the communities we're a member of, everybody would be better off. There are so many people who are dedicated to wielding authority and power over others, puffing themselves up to seem more than they are, and that makes us all worse off.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if I was going to do this part or not, but I just want to let you know that back in like 2007, I came in for ER Burke. And and speaking of, we're all right for the wall, I'm like, why didn't I book this? But you know what, to be honest, like I've learned, and it's just, I don't want to put any other actors in this. I think we all think we're ready before we're ready. Right. And that's a good thing. I wasn't ready back then. You know what I mean? I wasn't. And, before I booked Bosch and was on that for 7 seasons, I thought that I was ready for a series regular. And I remember thinking, I'm ready. Why don't I get these series regular roles? But then as I journeyed through that show, I was like, oh, this is totally different than what I was thinking. And so looking back on this, I'm joking with you, but I wanted to see if I'd ever been in for you before. And I was thinking to myself, I wasn't right for that role. I wasn't right yet, even though I thought that,
Well, and I really appreciate your being honest about it, because I wasn't right until I got right. And that's why this whole concept of being on a journey of finding yourself, finding the roles that you're right for, finding the communities and collaborators that enhance your opportunity to be a real positive contributor, that's your journey. And lo and behold, you got 7 years on a wonderful story. I love Bosch. I read all of those books. I'm a big fan of Michael Connelly's, and He writes so authentically about LA and about people. And so, yeah, there's always the crime to solve, but really it's about watching Bosch go through his life and become more and more authentically Bosch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all the ancillary characters around also are doing a lot of that as well. Because we're
For themselves and for him.
and for him, right? To doing that. And so I often said about that, what I discovered late is I was one of the moral compasses of the show. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? I can't just say I'm the moral compass of the show, but why? And I go deeper and that was a lot of reflection on me as a person once I started realizing that I saw myself.
That's a fantastic discovery, that you're capable, that your essence is capable of playing that role, of being right for the role of the moral compass. What a glorious discovery to make about yourself. And then how fortunate you are that you can apply that to your role as a dad and to your role as a friend and all the rest of the important roles in your life. And my success as a casting director enhanced my ability to be a friend, a partner, a father, and that's what's important. I mean, I love my Emmys, but I love my children.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that right before we got on, my son texted and said, "Hey, are you around at 2:30? I want to call you. I haven't talked to you in a couple of days, and I just want to say hi. Nothing up." And that's great.
You mentioned a lot about that, about just going out and living. And I think that's a great place to come down from in the book. It's just like, live your life, go out there. And I think something you were saying about, like, if you're sitting at a table with the same people, or if you're always doing the same things, to go out there and live your life, and it feeds you as an actor.
Absolutely.
Too. Yeah.
I've done a lot of interviews, and I've done a great many of them have been with people like me.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to talk to you, because your preparation, which I'm grateful for, but also your perspective is unique to you. And I think maybe it's a doorway for me into your communities that I can't knock down by talking to all the people I normally talk to. And so I'm really grateful for the invitation today, and very grateful for your emotional preparation and your readiness to have a meaningful conversation about what we both care about.
I love that. Thank you. What do you want anybody reading this book to take away?
Discover yourself, be on a journey to keep working at that, get better, be a better contributor, make community important, don't need the spotlight all the time, feed as much as you eat, all that kind of stuff. Participate.
I want to make sure I say the name right for the role. I love it. Breakdowns, breakups, and breakthroughs. John Frank Levey, thank you so much. And low key, like, I just said that, and because I've always had a dream of having my own talk show and all that stuff like that. And a podcast is my own talk show. So I said it. Thank you so much, John.
What a pleasure. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, DaJuan.
Didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you? Listening to John Levey talking about right for the role was going to be good. What a great guy. What a great guy, and a great talk. And, I still walk away fortified with my thought on, I think we are trying so hard to please, to get validated, to just be enough sometimes, that we are not doing these characters justice. And this talk really, really, really landed that for me even more and more and more. And I'm on a mission. In this new chapter of my career to really make it about the work and the business. I don't want to leave that out. Like I said in the beginning, the work and the business, but I want to bring me back to the characters and melding the two, as John says. You ever hear actors in the industry say they started writing for me, as they're talking about on a show, if you heard some of those talks with, actors who've been on shows for a long time, they say they started writing for me, or I want to get on a show where they start writing for me. And I think that's referring to they started writing more for the character that the actor was playing, right? They started seeing the melding of the two. Then they started, adding in certain things from those actors' personal lives into the character's life, kind of like, oh, you play the sax or you sing, and like, oh, let's like put that a little bit into the character as well. I believe this is the beautiful melding of the character and you that John Levey is talking about. And I also believe, I've talked about this on the pod, but I'll just reiterate it, that Pierce on Bosch was like that for me. Pierce was often referred to as the Boy Scout on the show. The one who was always by the book. I think that's me. And I'll talk about that in a second, but I think that's me. I've joked many times in the past that these two characters, like, there is a fine line. Of course, I've never been a detective in real life, but there's a fine line between the two. I really, really believe that they were writing for me. I gotta say that this is the D12 shot for me. I was hooked when John said all of this during our talk. I seriously could not write fast enough. Then I remembered it was recorded, but he said, if you are not being honest with yourself about where you are, then you can't be authentic. You can't be in an authentic relationship with your work, yourself, your spouse. Authenticity, simplicity, and honesty, he goes on to say. Do you know who you are? Are you dedicated to finding that out and being in a relationship with it? It being authenticity, simplicity, honesty, with knowing who you are. Have a very keen sense of self. What are your attributes? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? So I'm turning that back over to you for this D12 shot. Do you know? Seriously, have you taken a second to journal about this stuff? Write it down. See, I knew who I was when we were working on Pierce. I knew that part about myself, right? But I want you to figure that out too, so that you can mine it, or rather be it. As an actor, I used to be so scared to do that, to write it down, to say that I'm this one thing, to bring specificity to my work, because, what I thought it would mean, that I was not allowing myself to play anything. That thing that they talk about in theater school, be everything, be open. You can be 99 years old. Yeah. Hone in on what you do amazingly and definitely be open to more. But what I took from this conversation is that it really is about the melding of the two. But you can't meld, as John would say, if you don't know you. So hi, I'm DaJuan Johnson, and I love being honest, almost to a fault. My family always used to say, don't do a crime with DaJuan because he will tell on all of you. I truly believe that's me. But there's a little edgy side to me too, a little mystery that I don't want to spoil all the fun. I'm not going to tell you everything. I seriously want you to stop. Break out a journal. Really spin a D20. We call that 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Set a timer for 20 minutes and write your attributes, write your strengths, write your weakness. Really get a keen sense. And let this next full year, whenever you listen to this podcast, let this next quarter, this next week, this next whatever you want to dedicate time to really, really doing some self-exploration. And see where it takes you. Might take you to a deeper understanding of yourself and the characters you want to play. All right, that's me. That is all for this podcast, this episode of Think Bigger Podcast. If you enjoyed this, episode and the D12 shot, I hope you'll consider following me on Instagram and the tick of the talk at Think Bigger Coaching. I'm on both of them there. And if you, want to work with a Think Bigger team or myself, check us out at www.thinkbiggercoaching.com. And why don't you share this podcast with one other actor? I'm just asking you to share with one other actor or put it on your stories and the Instagrammies and stuff like that so more people can know about this pod, because I want to get it out there. I love getting my podcast out there. And so many people that listen to this podcast are not subscribed to it. Are you one of those people? Oh my goodness.